Greetings, my name is Andrew Duthie, and in this short video I'm going to show you how you can get started with Node.js using Visual Studio Code and the Node School tutorials. We're going to start on a fresh machine that does not have Node.js installed, and we'll start by installing Node.js. Now, under normal circumstances, I'd usually use the latest version of Node. In the case of using the Node School tutorials, it turns out there's a known issue with the 4.x releases of Node and one of the modules that's used in the tutorials. So I'm going to stick with an older version of Node for now. You can get to this by going to the Other Downloads link, and I'll switch over to that here, and it gives you a directory listing. So I'm going to go up to the next level up and go to the latest v0.12.x, which is not actually as much older as you might think. They made the leap from 0.12 to 4.x very recently. So I'll click on that directory. I'm going to want a 64-bit since I'm running on a 64-bit version of Windows, and I'm just going to use the MSI installer. So I'll click that and go ahead and tell it to run. So we'll go ahead and open that. I'll click Next, accept the license agreement, which of course I've read fully. Click Next, 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 and Install. And then I should get prompted for elevation. And we'll say yes. And this will take just a little bit to install. Now, Node.js is something that I'll be using primarily at the command line, and it's just a runtime engine for JavaScript. So basically, it's an environment where I can run and write JavaScript-based applications. So now that we've got Node installed, let's go ahead and install Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a new version of a code editor that originated as Visual Studio Online. It's an online was an online editor codenamed Monaco, and Microsoft has brought that into a standalone development environment. Now, this is not a full-fledged IDE like the full Visual Studio. It's really a simplified code editor, but it does include some really cool things like IntelliSense for JavaScript, so you can do node development using JavaScript and get IntelliSense. It also has debugging built into it. It also has some support for Git source control built right into it. So it's got a lot of features in a very lightweight and easy to install editor. So I'll click the Download Code for Windows button. Again, I'll tell Internet Explorer that I want to run this once I download it. And again, this is a very lightweight editor, so it doesn't take long to download. I am on a Fios connection, so it'll be pretty fast for me. But even if you're on a slower connection, it still won't take very long to install at all. It's a pretty lightweight application. So there we are. We're about 100%. Should launch here momentarily. We'll click Yes. Next. We're going to install this where it recommends. And next, and then I do like to have the shortcuts in Windows Explorer so that I can right-click a file or a folder and do open with code. So we'll click Next, Install. And this shouldn't take very long at all. And that's it. That's all the software that we need for this tutorial. So I'll click Finish. And then I'm going to switch over to Node School. So nodeschool.io is a website that hosts both information about in-person workshops where you can get together with others and run through some workshops and tutorials to learn Node. So it has a listing here of upcoming workshops. So you can see the ones in yellow are the ones that are yet to happen, and the ones in gray are, I believe, all tutorial or workshops that have happened already. So you can kind of find something that's relatively close to you. If there's not a workshop near you, then you can run through the tutorials on your own. So they call them workshoppers, and they're open source lesson modules, and these are all based in Node and are installed via the Node Package Manager, or NPM. So they all follow this pattern of Npm Install and the name of the tutorial. If we drop down a little bit further on the page, you can see the core workshoppers. We start, of course, with JavaScript. If you don't have experience with JavaScript, don't worry about it. Just use the JavaScripting tutorial or workshopper, and you'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and start with that. And we can see that the instructions for this are npm install -g JavaScripting. So I'm going to use a nice shortcut key in Windows key X, to get to the power user menu. And I'm going to open an admin command prompt. And I'm going to use Windows and an arrow key to snap that to the left. I'm going to use CD for change directory and change down to the root of my C drive. And then I'm going to create a directory for my node development. So I'm going to call mkdir node. And then I'm just going to switch to that by using CD, and then when I type N and type the tab key, it automatically completes that for me since it knows that that directory exists. So I'm going to switch over to that directory, and now I'm good to go. So I'm going to say npm install -g JavaScripting, just as in the instructions. And when we see the cursor start making this little spinning animation, that indicates that NPM is going out and finding that JavaScripting package out on the internet and pulling down all of the files necessary to install this package for me. Now the -g tells Node, or the NPM installer, to install this package globally. Now keep in mind, if you install something globally, that means that anywhere in your command line, you're going to be able to access the files in that package. Now, the upside of that is that I don't have to be in a specific folder to be able to call some of those files on the command line. The downside is the increased risk of collision with other packages that are installed. So what you want to do is, if you want to install these non-globally, you would need to do some specific steps to navigate down into the directory of the JavaScripting folder. I recommend installing these globally, and if you're concerned about the potential for problems with other modules, you can simply uninstall them using uninstall-g JavaScripting once you're done with that tutorial. So let's go ahead and fire up the tutorial simply by calling JavaScripting. What we get is a nice navigable menu here, so I can scroll up and down. And I mentioned earlier that there was a known issue with the 4.x releases of the Node School tutorials. There's actually a specific Node module that's used to create these menus, and that is the thing that has the issue with the latest versions on Windows specifically. So using 4.x release with this on Windows, you would not be able to navigate this menu. So for now, you can, on Windows, stick with the 0.12 releases. So let's go ahead and just hit enter to start the introduction tutorial. And what we'll see here is we get some nice directions. So it tells us how we can keep our code organized. So it says we should create a folder for the workshop and then change into that. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to again use mkdir, and we'll just use the same name as the name of the tutorial, JavaScripting. And then we'll just change into that. And again, we can just use the tab key to autocomplete. So now we're in there. And now we need to create a new file. So depending on whether you're on Windows or Linux, on Linux you can use touch introduction.js, or in Windows we can do type null and pipe that to introduction.js. You can also, if you were to type notepad introduction.js, Notepad would prompt you if you wanted to create the file if it didn't exist already. So that's another way that you could go about it. So I'll hit enter. We've created the file. Now I need some way to edit it. So I could just simply say notepad introduction.js, and that would give us a very, very simple editor. But I want something with a little more features. So we're going to do code dot, and what that's going to do is launch Visual Studio Code in the context of the current directory. And I'm going to again use the Windows and arrow key to snap this. I can click here to open that file, and then I can simply say, as in the instructions, console.log, and note that I get IntelliSense and hello. And add the semicolon, Control S to save. Now we can go over here and again follow the instructions, and we can say JavaScripting space verify, and this is going to verify that our solution is correct, introduction.js, hit enter. And we did it. So we've got a pass message. It says we passed. We got the right output, and we've successfully worked on that challenge. Now let's launch this again. Let's launch the tutorial again. And we'll also see that it tells us that this tutorial is completed, the introduction tutorial. So we successfully completed that tutorial. We've made our first step towards learning JavaScript in the context of Node. Visual Studio Code gives us a nice IntelliSense experience and also gives us a list of all of the files that we've been working on so far. So it makes for a really good experience overall. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Look for more videos from me to come, and good luck learning Node with Visual Studio Code.